So I'm going to warm us up a bit with some rapid fire questions. And so, as quickly as you can go, we need to know, what's your favorite school subject? I'm asking this because you were a teacher in your past life. School subject.
Believe it or not, geography was my favorite subject, and maybe that's why I ended up as a minister of mines.
Oh, amazing. What is your favorite beverage?
My favorite beverage? Some wine is good.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Amazing, that's mine as well. What keeps you awake at night?
What keeps me awake is the number of our people that desperately need education, which gives them the potential to be the best they can be, which we are failing to deliver, notwithstanding that the world now has adequate technology for everyone who wants to learn to learn.
And my last rapid fire question is, what advice would you give to your young self?
Go for it. I think that the worst thing that you could do is to miss the opportunities that you may not be great at, but you'll make a difference. And hesitancy is our worst enemy. And I think there's been time in my life as a young person when I've hesitated, and now I look back, I say, damn, why did I not go for it?
That is a perfect segue into the next set of questions I have for you. I'll start with the tribute video from UN Women, where the word visionary and its synonyms were often used to describe you. Did you envision your journey from the classroom to the highest levels of South African government and the UN, especially in the historical context you came of age in? What inspired it?
Well, you know, working in the government and working in the UN is more or less the same, because the UN is a consolidation of governments. It's the biggest bureaucracy you can ever meet in the world. And if you have a strong vision in that bureaucracy, you have to do it yourself. Because bureaucrats are not about to make your dreams come true. They are there to push paper and to try and maintain the system to the extent possible. And that comes from a good place. So I think I learned from working in government that if you feel strongly about what has to be, push it. And get into an institution, especially an institution that is made up of bureaucracies, and work very hard to follow through. But also more important, bureaucrats at their best, they like order, even when it doesn't make sense, because not all order makes sense. So be very clear about where you are taking them and where you are going. And in that way, you make it much easier for them to work with you, to support you, and to help you deliver on your vision and dream.
That's incredible. And the words you use, maintaining the system, get to my next question for you, which is, you're a longtime champion of women's rights, and you've worked across many divides before the UN, at the UN, and even after. How do you get people to care about gender parity, like even people who are not women?
You push. It's not very easy to turn people to be enthusiastic about gender equality. But it's very important to always prove and show the benefits of gender equality to the women, obviously, that you are working and supporting, but also to the people that are skeptical. I found that working with people in rural areas, parents, for instance, who would marry their child at the slightest provocation, you have to show them what has happened to the children who did not get married. What are the material benefits of the parents who did not marry off their children? If you work with men who find it difficult to see value in appointing and assigning women key decision-making positions, show those men what women have done in similar positions. And right now, we do not have a shortage. We don't have enough women, but we have enough women to show what women can achieve decisively.
Yeah, that is true. And on this point about demonstration effect, in McKinsey's most recent report on women in Africa, the authors note that Africa ranks third place for female political representation, with 25% of political posts held by women on average. It's really Rwanda, South Africa, and Ethiopia leading the way on parity. And this direction suggests that female quotas may work. Are there lessons, personal and otherwise, that we can draw from the Southern and Eastern African experience? And what do you think it will take to get more women in politics, particularly in Africa?
Well, let me just start by saying that good corporate governance requires that when you make decisions, you involve the people you are making decisions for. It requires that women in this context are also part of the decisions that are being made about them. Sort of, nothing about us without us. And you need to make sure that you take women in their diversity and the potential and influence that they have in making the world a better place. Having said that, you also are not trying to discriminate against men. It is important that, why are you so concerned about not discriminating men? It is important that you don't discriminate against men. It's important for men to become allies in this journey, but you also have to make sure that they are not dominant. And leaders in government, in private sector, etc., who have power and authority have a responsibility to make sure that in the countries and in the spaces where they lead, they make it possible for men to create the space that women require, and that you bring women using the policy to safeguard the presence of women. We have seen that countries that have got quotas and targets have done much better, because the norms in most of our society still tend not to favor the engage of women, irrespective of whether they are qualified or not. Just for example, now, the number of women who do well at higher education, which is something that women do to themselves. Women qualify and achieve because of the work they do. When they get into society, when someone else has to pick them up and sponsor them to participate, then we have a problem. So if you don't have quotas and special measures that force the people to sponsor women, women will do their part. They will be educated, they will get in front of the door, and there is no sponsor to actually take them to the next stage. And the quotas and the targets play that role of enabling women to cross to the next stage. And it really is pity and actually quite annoying that in 2022, this is what we're talking about. I was talking about this 30 years ago. And this is where we still are. But it is what it is. And we therefore still need these quotas and targets. The inequality between men and women is very much related to the underrepresentation of women in decision making. So it is important to enable women to be represented.
That's amazing. And I want us to switch to the topic of women in business now, and start with labor force participation. At first glance, labor force participation of African women is high and it seems virtually on par with men. However, when we dig deeper, we find that job quality is lacking and too few women make it into senior professional ranks. We have also observed women's regression in labor participation during COVID. How do we get women on the path to progress from your experience?
Yeah. In general, women tend to be employed at the bottom of the pyramid. And to bring them up takes a lot of work. The assumption that women are less than continuously put women in an unfavorable position. It is also a challenge that people who are in HR, have not read the memo about equality. This is one of the most frustrating things because they are the ones that employ people. They give you your terms of reference. They will give men and women the same terms of reference and pay them differently, for instance. There has to be something that we do about HR that enables the women to have a fair chance. It is also important for women to be as assertive as they need to be when they seek opportunities. Guys take chances. If you advertise a job and you have to tick 10 boxes and they think they can do 5, they will do 5 and they'll say, I'll forge the other 5, and walk themselves and be confident about getting there, sometime to the point of impressing the person who's employing. Women can be so thorough, irritatingly thorough. They will check if they fit and tick all the box fully. If they tick 8, they'll say, no, I can't. I need the 2, and take themselves out. Women must not be so risk averse. People who succeed are people who take risks. And I think it's important to push women to be risk takers, but it's important for the world to recognize what women bring to the job spaces.
Yeah, that is really profound. And speaking of ESG is a topic that encompasses this, right? We need to improve inclusion, and stakeholder capitalism is a related topic, and all of these have been commanding headlines recently. I would like to ask you what you think the private sector what role do they have to play in driving social change for women and in just human rights in Africa broadly?
Yeah, well, obviously, private sector is a critical stakeholder in society, a critical stakeholders in Africa. The majority of our countries do not have the size of private sector that we need, which tends to push a lot of people into work in government. But where private sector continues to be the light and to be a potential leaders. In the last few years, I think we have observed the loss of trust of people on their government, something that you guys have to be worried about. You need to consider taking part in politics because you are the leaders we have been waiting for. It is not okay to be critical of governments without taking the responsibility to make it better. Am I right or am I right? There is an increasing number of people who represent mediocrity, who stand for government because you are not coming through. So we need you. I am so serious about this. Government is not the place where you send people that you yourself cannot respect. It really is the place where you want to send the best of your country because these are the people who have the responsibility to look after everything we have. So if you think about the role of government, to begin with, you need the people who can help to regulate our countries in the best possible way. Of course, one thing that I think universities have done wrong is that they have not emphasized ethics enough. Because a lot of the people who steal from government actually have degrees. And so if you could find time to learn some ethics, do that. It's good for your people. So you have good governance that regulates fairly. And then you have private sector that wants to prosper. Government must engage and build a relationship with private sector so that private sector can both prosper as well as contribute in the best interest of society. Private sector thrives in the best possible way in countries where there's democracy and there's opportunities for people. Just like countries where there's gender equality, that country is often able to thrive. Take the Nordic countries, and don't tell me those countries have always been rich. They were once poor. The development of the Nordic country has a lot to do with the extent to which they took gender equality seriously. They empowered and invested in both men and women. And one of the simple things they did for everybody, which has helped to shoulder their countries, is just childcare, which enable women to have a choice to work. Children should not be seen as barriers to progress to parents, and this should not accrue to one parent. And employers, which is private sector, have to champion that. Private sector has to provide the opportunities that women need in order for them to be the best they can be, to contribute better in the economy, as well as to ensure the development of their countries. So I see government and business as partners, because if one is lagging behind, everything lags behind. It's important to build these relationships. This is why we need you. You go and sort it out.
Okay, and so we've taken note of that and we'll take heed. Now, I would like to take you back to your time as an educator. According to the same McKinsey study that I quoted earlier, for every 100 literate men, there are only 76 literate women in Africa on an aggregate basis. It's the lowest level of parity for education globally. As an educator and a frontline advocate for female education, do you have any field anecdotes that illustrate why this gap persists till today?
Well, it's the biases that has historically existed towards girl children who don't get to go to school at an early age, who drop out at an early age. And that is why it is important that in all our countries, we really pay attention to the completion in our schools. In most countries, the percentage of the children who start at school and those who finish just grade 12, chalk and cheese. It's important that children are assisted to get to the end. And it's also important to provide second chance education so that if they've dropped out, there is a mechanism for them to complete. But more than anything else, it's important that the foundation level of our education is quality. Because if children have learned at an early age and have acquired strong skills at an early age, even if they drop out, it will be possible for them to catch up again and complete. Weak education at an early age is one of the worst things you can do to a child, because the possibility for them to stand up for themselves and to take full advantage of the opportunities they may encounter earlier on in their lives becomes even much more difficult. But as a matter of fact, strengthening public education is one of the most important things that we do in any country. The good thing about education is that it's not a competition. You can make it available to everybody. And once a child has acquired education, or even an adult, it's yours. No man can take it away from you if you're a woman. No government, nobody can take it away. It's something that we should wish for everyone to have. It is also the best way to make sure that we've got the largest pool of people who have capacity to contribute in our countries.
Yeah, and as you were speaking, the one thing that, another enabler that came to mind is the digital opportunity. I think this goes hand in hand with like second chances and like the other themes you mentioned. And how do you envision women and the youth seizing this digital opportunity? There are many startups, there are lots of things, developments going on these days, but you've had like, a very high level view as someone very senior and high ranking. And so I just wonder if you have any like ideas of like how we can keep seizing this digital opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I think it is fair to say that children who are at school today, if they finish school without digital literacy, they're just as well as illiterate. Because they will live in a world that cannot use people who do not have digital literacy. So digital literacy is now a basic need. Unfortunately, most of our teachers are not digitally literate. So you cannot depend on them to be the ones that will see to it that our children are digitally literate. I mean, I work now in a foundation that specializes in training teachers for digital literacy, because of realizing that for our children to acquire digital literacy, I need to make sure that the teachers are digital literate. I need to make sure that the teachers who teach languages, the teachers who teach home economics, the teachers, any subject, because you don't know where the child is going to end up. Every child must walk out of a school as a digital native. If we don't achieve that, we have cheated the children. Their education is useless. And it is also important that in addition to the children being digitally literate and functional, we also train more children to take jobs in the tech world. We need them to program. We need them to be software developers. We need them to develop content so that in general, the jobs that are available in technology are occupied by children. If you think of us in developing countries, in the first industrial revolution, which depended on the steam engine, and it is the industrial revolution that fueled colonialism, we were left out as people in developing countries, much worse for women. The second industrial revolution, where electricity was a driver, we were left out. Many of our countries became electrified much later when other nations had moved very fast. The third industrial revolution, which is the digital revolution, where we began to automate and we began to organize work in a particular way, we began to show up, but not adequately. We are now at the fourth industrial revolution. People, we can't miss this one. It's a new one for everybody, just like climate change is a new, green economy is new for all of us. We have to be there with everything we have and take advantage of it and make sure that our children, our communities are as informed as it can, because it is just going to be like access to electricity. If you don't have access to electricity, you can't function. If you don't have access to digitalization and automation, you don't have access to the progress that you need.
That's perfect. And I think it ties in really well with our conference theme of Reimagine the Road Ahead. And we're getting close to the conclusion of this segment, regretfully. What does the road ahead look like to you personally and for the SDGs, which you're so passionate about?
You know, even before the pandemic, we were not in a good place with SDGs. We were falling behind. As you know, the end of SDGs is 2030. We were just not moving at a pace we are required in order to meet the objectives of the SDGs. And of course, the pandemic moved us right back. In order for us to try and build up the pace and try and save a lot of time and reimagine the future that we want for ourselves, there is a lot that we have to change. When we talk about building back better after the pandemic, it is doing things radically different from the way we were doing things, because in any case, we were already not doing things in the right way. We certainly cannot sustain discrimination of women, for one. We cannot sustain the rate of the numbers of people who do not get full education. We have to push our children to the STEM subjects and to make sure they are ready to engage in the economy in the best possible way. But in particular, we have to rethink the way we govern. Because the biggest crisis that we have, if I just talk about Africa, we have a leadership crisis. With all the problems that we have in Africa, with all the challenges that we have answers. There isn't a single problem that we have in Africa that does not have an answer. But we need to lead differently. And I'm putting it back to you. You are needed to drive the leadership that is focused and is supported to make the right choices. The choices that will make the future that you want. Because you are the ones we have been waiting for. If we have to reimagine the world, we are imagining it the way you want it. So come and do it.
I can't imagine a more inspiring note to end on. Please join me in thanking Her Excellency Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka.